Go ahead and sit up. So we're going to take a seat with our legs out and just take your hand to the small of your back. And what I like to do, because we want to really get to know when we talk about the lower back, sacral lumbar area, right? This is what's so important in maintaining comfort. So if you reach down and find your tailbone way down, find that little lovely little knob, and put your hand on your back, and there's your sacrum. And so we can rock it a little bit. You might even bend your knees a little if that helps. You want to feel that rocking. So we're going to take a lot of our attention today onto the sacrum, which is this triangular bone. And I want you to go ahead and feel those little knobbies on either side at the top of the sacrum, which is actually your pelvic rim. And then right in there, your SI joint. Give them a little massage right inside those bony protuberances. And it's that relationship of your pelvic bone, your iliac crest with your sacrum that has everything to do with a comfortable lower back. And we want the lumbar, which is then from the top of the sacrum to the base of the ribs, to come inward. So when we sit, that's often we take our legs out in front of us and sit. Go ahead and try that. This is often very challenging to get that pelvis forward. So you might have to bend the knees or take the legs wider. We're going to lay down and feel into the relationship here of all the different movements of the lower back and this relationship of the 5 lumbar vertebrae with our sacrum so that we can sit comfortably. And when we're moving throughout the day, we're going to stay aware of how we're holding ourselves. So with that said, go ahead and lay down on your mat. And place your hands, so knees are bent, feet are on the floor, hands are at your hip bones. And we just want that external awareness. And just rest for a minute. Just notice where your body settles. So close your eyes if you want. And think of settling your bones. So start with the soles of your feet. Make sure they're in a place that feels comfortable to your legs. And then feel the weight of your pelvis and where that pelvis is grounded. Do you feel equal weight on your sacrum? And then coming up from the pelvis, you'll go into that lower back area. And if you're just relaxed, that lower back should feel light, not pressed against the ground. You can make little adjustments along the way as well to make yourself a little bit more comfortable. Feel the weight of your rib cage sinking into the ground. Notice what touches. And the same with the arm bones and the skull. And then start to elongate your breath just enough to really feel full and to feel empty on either side of the breath. And as you relax into the breath, notice how your spine responds to your breathing. So as you relax, if you truly let go, your spinal column will respond by creating a very gentle wave-like action. The pelvis will rock a little bit one way and then the other with the breath. So as we inhale and the belly opens to let the diaphragm muscle lower so we can bring the breath deep into our lungs. Then the pelvis rocks forward. You'll feel your hip bones come into your hands more. And then as we exhale, the belly will relax. You don't have to squeeze it, just let it relax, and you'll feel your pelvis settle a little bit more towards the lower back. And again, you don't have to press it, but just notice that natural motion, which when we relax, that's a very important internal massage for our spinal column as well as all of our organs. And when we get tense or stressed, we tend to hold ourselves more tightly, so we miss out on that fluidity of motion in the spine. So the intention of yoga is to create and maintain relaxation response. So we have this ongoing pulsation throughout our body. So now we're going to exaggerate that movement a bit and play around with all the different ways the pelvis can move, because the pelvis is what's known as the second chakra area, the area of fluidity. It's the element of water, where our legs and the base of our spine is earth. So we want to be grounded and then fluid. So as you inhale the next time, take a nice deep breath in and let your pelvis rock towards the tailbone. You'll feel your lower back arch a bit more. Then as you exhale, press your lower back into the floor as you scoop your belly in and up. So go ahead and exaggerate pelvic tilt, but just to a comfortable range of motion in either direction. It's not trying to go as far as possible. It's just meeting that sensation that brings a little bit of interest. So going back and forth and noticing, especially when you tilt the pelvis, called posterior tilt, you might feel a little stretch in the lower back and then a return to its natural curve, which is an anterior curve. So a couple more of those, moving with your breath. So we're going to do some very subtle movements this morning that are so important to the integrity of our alignment and the suppleness of the lower back. Let's go ahead and now settle on the sacrum and let your knees just ever so slightly go right to left. So you're just aware of the weight distribution shifting on your sacrum from one SI joint to the other. And then find the center. So we move away from center to find it again. Now with your hands on your hip bones, we're going to do a little movement. Your hips stay directly on the ground, no lifting off the ground. But slide your left hip towards your left armpit. So you're squeezing your left side waist. And your right side waist is lengthening. And then you're going to shift. So we call these hip hikers. So you're going to take your pelvis and simply slide towards your armpit on one side and away from the other. I call these hulas also. It's like doing the hula. And you're just gently sliding up and down. So you're moving towards the head and away from the head. And I want you to feel how your lower back is responding. Pardon me. And go to just that first point of sensation if there's any resistance in the lower back. That first point of sensation that tells you you've gone to your end point. And then pause in the middle. Stop all movement. The second movement, you're going to take and point your left hip towards the sky and watch your left knee move directly away from your head. Your left glute is coming off the ground, and then set it down and roll over your sacrum to the left and bring your right hip up. So as you go side to side, you want to avoid trying to lift your hip toward your head, but just take it to the ceiling. So now we're going to the front plane and the back plane. The hip coming forward of the torso, just side to side. So this is another movement. I call it swiveling. We call it hip rockers because you're rocking side to side. And when we're going through our traditional yoga asana or just moving through our day, the movement of our pelvis is so important because it's our anchor. And everything else moves around it. It's really the center of most of our movement. So rocking right to left and noticing what you're feeling. Use the weight in your foot to push the hip towards the sky. And pause now in the center. And you may decide to take your feet a little wider or more narrow depending on what you're feeling. And then return once more to hip hikers. So again, nothing lifts off the ground. And you're just swaying your hips right to left. Avoid pushing your lower back into the floor. Just keep your belly relaxed. And beyond the fact that what we're doing here is massaging the deep ligaments around the sacral area And you're also awakening your awareness of all the different ways our pelvis can move, so that we have a choice during the course of our day to move our pelvis in ways that support a healthy spine. Notice your breath. And we're repeating this same movement several times. So again, we're bringing circulation into this dense connective tissue that connects your sacrum to your pelvis and the juncture of your sacrum with your lumbar vertebrae. Now pause in the center. And then once again, go rock right to left, pushing one hip to the sky. So we're just going to do this twice today, but on your own, you could always do this several times, back and forth between these two movements. And you want it to be really smooth, not jerky, just rolling into each side as smoothly as possible, gliding, so to speak, with your breath, and paying attention to the feedback of the body. And then we'll pause in the center, and now we're going to move on to two more movements. So again, these two, hip hikers, hip pointers, could be repeated. Take your feet away from each other towards the edge of your mat. Keep your right leg up. In fact, put your right hand on your right thigh so it doesn't move. Flex your left ankle. Pull your toes towards your knee. The ball of the foot will come off the floor. Drop your left knee into center. Your left hip will come up a bit. Feel that opening on the left side hip. Your right leg stays up. Get your right leg straight up, right foot flat on the floor. And then bring it back to center and take the right knee down, but come from your hip and your left leg stays up. And then lift it up. And do this back and forth. So again, the movement is continual, slow, fluid. And the intention is to take your pelvis in yet another direction. This is an oblique angle as we bring that hip forward and kind of across the body, keeping one knee up. Make sure the other knee stays straight up. So one foot is grounded, the other foot is rolling to the inner edge. Again, take inventory. Now, all of these movements could be done individually because they feel good, but there's definitely a very intelligent purpose of doing them in this order. These four movements. The first two, again, repeating several times. We just did twice today. But you might want to repeat them for 10 minutes, just those two movements. Now let's pause in the center. This one we don't repeat, we just do that one series. Walk your feet a little closer together, bring your arms out wide in a T position. With your feet shoulder width apart, lower both knees to your left. Keep your feet shoulder width apart. And draw the tailbone in a little bit. So you're going to feel that opening in the front of the hip. But again, the purpose is to move the sacrum in yet another direction. So take the top knee up only. So your knees open wide. You'll feel the tug of the inner thigh. And then roll to the other side. And then right away, bring the top knee up. And so just flowing once again, right to left. But make sure you're only lifting one knee at a time so that we're not overextending the lower back. Good. So we call this double knee rock. Again, this one I use a lot at the end of all my practices, but the series of four very effective in releasing lower back tension. And then slowly coming right into center. Placing your hands on your hip bones again. Rock once more with pelvic tilt. And then you're going to bring your knees off the feet off the floor. Pull your knees towards your chest and give that lower back a little stretch. Notice how that feels. And then placing your feet on the floor. Place your hands below the hip bones right at the groin. Lift your right foot off the floor just a couple of inches, not very far, just a little bit, and then put it down, and then the left foot. So you're going to just slowly go right to left, lifting one foot and then the other. And as you do this, I would like you now to tone your belly. So imagine that you're trying to pull your hip bones towards each other, and you're toning your abdominal wall so it's firm and helping to support your back as you lift. So what we're doing is we're awakening our psoas. So the psoas being attached to the lumbar spine anteriorly and coming through the body to the femur, the thigh bone, is the only muscle that attaches the torso to the legs. And now if that feels okay, simultaneously take one leg up and the other leg down. So now you'll have to really tone your abdomen more. Not too high, just a little bit. And try not to kick from your knee. You want to just relax your lower leg. The movement's from your thigh, not your foot. Okay. And then if you have the strength, you could take your leg further away from you and not put it back down on the ground. So now you're sustaining the strength in your abdominal wall. If that's too much, go get closer and touch your foot closer to your body. We call these Yogi Bicycles. Eventually you might be bicycling out there. And we're breathing, right? And really supporting ourselves with the toning of the abdomen, keeping that sacrum grounded. Side to side, just really allowing the psoas to awaken, because the psoas tends to get both weak and tight, especially if we sit a lot. If we use it a lot for skiing and biking and running, then it'll be tight and strong. But oftentimes the psoas, so we're just awakening it for people whose psoas is tight. People that sit quite a bit. So we need to wake it up because it is a support system to the lumbar. Let's place the feet on the ground now and feel that. And we're going to open it up. So take your hands and face your fingertips to the sky. Draw your arm bones close to your body. Squeeze your shoulder blades together and breathe into your heart. And as you exhale, push into your arms and your feet and lift your hips up off the floor in a bridging position. Press gently back on your head. And now the center of this pose is not the pelvis, it's the upper palate. It's the throat. So press the head down and breathe into that throat area. And then expand from the throat through the torso. And let the hips come up, and then gently squeeze and release the glutes. Just squeeze and release, so you're giving a little pulsation, and you're helping to open the front of that hip joint, right? And you're awakening the gluteals, which are also super important for stabilizing the pelvis. And the glutes can be some of the strongest, but are usually the laziest muscles in the body. So it's really important to do things to keep them awake, to keep them working. So we're squeezing and releasing. You can adjust the level of your lift according to what you're feeling throughout your body. And we're breathing. Give it a good squeeze and release, squeeze and release. And then squeeze, hold. And then spreading the shoulder blades apart, come down one vertebrae at a time, stretching your spine down on the ground. And then take the arms overhead, stretch them, try and get your hands to the floor overhead. If you need to, take more of a cactus pose. Pressing the arms down, take a deep breath in. As you exhale, push onto the feet, lift the hips up. And then stretching your arms overhead. Still, leave your arms in place, stretching and lengthen your spine back down. So you're lengthening out your spine. Arms reaching overhead, spine coming to the ground. Stretch to the lower back and then relax onto the sacrum. Take a breath in and again press up as you exhale, bridging. Now create that traction. Arms reaching up, spine stretching down. Deep breath in at the bottom. exhale one more time. Bring the hips up. Inhale, stretch, and then exhale, take it down. Leave the hips on the ground. Take the arms overhead, inhaling. And then exhale, relax. Okay, now bring your hands behind your head. And instead of interlacing your fingers, just place your fingertips, finger pads on your head. And let your elbows come up a little. Lift your head with your hands. Press your head back into your hands. So you want to keep the throat open. Now pressing gently into the feet, activate the muscles of your legs. So let your legs be lively, hugging muscle to bone. And now tone the pelvic floor. So gently lift the muscles at the perineum between the sits bones, pubic bone, tailbone. And then tone the lower belly. Think of scooping it up on the abdomen. And notice if you flatten your lower back. And let's not do that. Let's keep the sacrum grounded. So move your pelvis more anteriorly, moving the weight towards the tailbone. And now hug your front ribs in and curl your shoulders off the ground. So it's not a big lift, but you're rolling up and feeling the upper belly engage. Things situated here. And then down. So we're engaging the rectus abdominis at the upper belly. So now we're awakening our inner fire at the third chakra. And squeezing that upper belly. Feel those front ribs come in and down. And notice what's happening in the pelvis. This is what's important. A lot of times when we do these types of sit-ups, the tailbone will lift and the lower back will flatten. I'd like you to try and keep the sacrum grounded and just lift from the ribs and keep the sacrum neutral. So we're going to awaken what we call our inner Agni, our inner fire of digestion. Not only digesting the food we eat, but digesting the information that our body is giving us. So we're listening well. And noticing how well we digest the world around us. Information's always coming at us. How well are we taking it in and assimilating it? Let's do 3 more. Squeeze, like you're squeezing an orange. Get juicy. And then release down. Take your arms out. Let's roll the head right to left. Sometimes the neck gets tired if you pull on it. So again, notice what you're feeling on your backside, because this is an awakening of how many different ways our pelvis can move, anterior, posterior, and then right to left, lifting up and down, so that little swishing action, and then the rotation. And then the idea that we're toning the pelvic floor and the abdomen, and we're engaging the muscles at the lowest ribs. We're going to come around now to all fours and put that into action without the feedback of the floor. So you can either roll to your side and come up, or bring your feet off the floor and do a little rock and roll on your spine if that feels comfortable. And then we're going to come all the way around onto all fours. And revisit all of those alignment principles. But now we're in this, what we call this open chain. We're in the air, so we have to bring that awareness. So let's take the shins, and you can have the toes tucked or the toes flat, depending on how that feels. And your hands slightly forward of your shoulders. Push into the finger pads and anchor the inner edge of your hands, so you're hugging your forearms towards each other. And you're hugging the space between your legs. So you want to hug to midline. And then feel the inner thighs draw back. So you bring the sitting bones up and get that lumbar curve in place. And we're going to go ahead and exaggerate and let the whole spine sink, but keep the arms straight. So we're going into what I call the hammock position. You're letting the back melt forward. Your spine sink deep into your body. Just let your neck relax. And breathe and feel into the core of your spine. So as we sink into the spine like this, if it feels like too much anywhere, especially the lower back, you can always engage the abdomen. But we're allowing, by letting this go deep, we're opening up those spaces vertebrae by vertebrae. And all the little connectors, the ligaments and the tendons, and giving them the opportunity to awaken. So notice your sensation. You might feel more like mid-back or in your shoulders, or for some of you, might be in the lower back. Just feel into that. And you don't have to be rigid. You can move slightly here and there. And 3 more breaths, just allowing this shape of the spine to go deep into that spinal column. And then we're going to reverse it slowly. So starting from the pelvis, you're going to draw the tailbone in, engage the pelvic floor, scoop up the lower belly, vertebrae by vertebrae, moving to that rounded cat position. Draw your hips slightly behind your knees so you can pop the heel of the hand off the floor and release your wrist joint. Hold for a few breaths. Feel this action, tugging firmly on the front body. And then we'll go into our cat-cow, which is starting from the pelvis and rotating vertebrae by vertebrae into extension. And now with your breath, exhale and do the opposite. I invite you to play with this and be curious. Go in and notice what you're feeling. Know that you are massaging your spine. And I like to think of the spine like a series of hockey pucks separated by jelly donuts. And our jelly donuts are the discs of the spine. And we need this type of compression release. We're squeezing and releasing to keep those donuts nice and fluffy and the gel very fluid. So notice, and if you feel a lot in your wrist, make sure that as you round your back that you come away from the wrist and give it a little release. So flexion is when we round the back and shorten the front, and then extension is when we open the front and contract the back. And now I'd like you to come in and find your neutral. So let's imagine what we felt on the ground. The sacrum was grounded. The lower back comes in. So if we draw the inner thighs back, that will happen. We tone the pelvic floor, we tone the lower belly, and we take the front ribs in. So we're not sagging. We're lifting the space between those lowest ribs. The shoulder blades move towards each other and take your gaze slightly forward. Be aware of the positioning of your neck as well. So neutral spine, draw back from the back of your skull rather than lifting your nose. And feel neutral. Now shift your weight, take your left leg back and put your left foot on the floor. And again, redefine neutral. So what happens often is when we take a leg back is your left hip would ride up. You can even feel that. It wants to come up, but we're going to roll it down. And we want to keep the sacrum level. And that takes conscious awareness. So roll that left hip to level, press into your left foot and your right shin, tone the belly, lengthen the spine, firm the arms to lift the heart. Now, let the left leg float up to the level of your hip. Squeeze the muscles of your leg, Tadasana foot. Squeeze firmly. Square the pelvis and shoulders, and then if it's right, take your opposite arm off the ground and put it in a 90 degree at the elbow. So your elbow is bent. Good. And you're supporting yourself and maintaining the squaring of the hips. It's so easy to start to lean one way or the other. So feel into that and keep holding and breathing and sustaining that alignment of neutral spine. And then release your hand to the floor, pull your knee to your head to your knee, and squeeze at your belly. And then stretch it out and feel neutral. And bring it in and squeeze. So can you stabilize that pelvis as you do this? Extend it out. This time leave your head up, put your left knee down. Pull back towards your heels and pop the heel to hand up. Let's release the wrist joint. Breathe. Now we have another side to do coming up. Now the option here is that we could also do this from the forearms, because if the wrists have issues, that's another way of doing this. That's important to realize, because if your wrists are distracting you, it takes away from the rest of your body. So take the right leg back. Now square the pelvis. Again, feel how the right hip wants to roll up. So what are you going to do to settle it down? Maintaining the equal length along your side body between hips and armpits. Lift the head. Good. Tone the belly. And now lift the leg up to the level of the pelvis, not beyond. So you want neutral spine. If the leg keeps going, the spine usually drops. So tone the front side. Shift your weight, take the opposing arm off, and pause and breathe. And feel what it takes to square the hips and shoulders. Hug deep into your core. So when we develop this core condition, this core awareness, this core awakening, then as we move through our day, our core supports us. Keep breathing. Outer body hugging towards the core of the inner body. Release the hand down, pull the knee to the head to the knee, and then take it out. So as you do this, notice the stability you're maintaining through your movement. Now pause and put the knee down. Round the back, take it towards child, pop the heel of the hand up. You want to always release the wrists. We're going to come to the floor because this is the other super important therapy, right? Let's go to the ground and create a little cradle for the head. And when you come down, and I taught this for years too, but we live and learn, is we hugging the legs towards each other. Now that's one thing when you're down here, but when we start to create more curve in our back, move your feet at least hip distance, if not shoulder distance apart, so that you're going to have room for your pelvis to move. Lay your head on your hands underneath you like a pillow, and now go into that breath work. Come with us, Lindy. There you go. The breath that we started with, we were laying on our back and we were just breathing and feeling how the whole spine moves with the breath. Let's go back to that. So if you really let yourself relax, you'll feel as you breathe. This could be therapy too. If you've done a lot of snow shoveling or whatever, your lower back's tender. As we lay on our belly, notice that as you really let go, your lumbar will fall in more deeply. So you're encouraging lumbar curve. Now, if you're a belly sleeper, if you sleep on your belly, that might be too much, 8 hours of this. It's really best to train yourself to sleep on your back. We can talk about that another time. But laying on your belly can actually put too much pressure. But right now it's good, right? Relax. Soften into the lower back. And then with your next breath, we're going to go ahead and come up. Now you could always do that longer on your own because it's a lovely release. So bringing the hands out in front of you, take your elbows forward of your shoulders, called the Sphinx, right? So we're just going to do this low. And let's feel this as if, I know this is, You know, this is something we want to repeat a lot, in fact, our entire life, because our backs really weren't built for all we ask of them. So press into the floor and press down to lift up so you feel that curve in your back. And then you want to I like to wobble my hips a little bit to make sure I'm relaxing my lower back. If you want, you could press down into the feet, toes tucked if you need to, if your feet are cramping, or toenails down. Press into your knees also, because we don't want to lock the knees ever. But there's a tendency to do that here. So push your kneecaps gently into the floor. And then press your pubic bone. So when we go into what's called a backbend or extension of the spine, so now we're opening the front of the spine, is we do want to tilt the pelvis posteriorly a little bit, because we're still getting that lumbar curve, right? So we want to lengthen the lumbar curve by engaging the muscles on the pelvic floor and the abdomen. Okay? And then go into that curve. Give that curve its position. If this is too high, go lower. Start low. So maybe you might have to start lower if those curves aren't there right now. Some of you could go higher, coming elbows in. And again, just kind of letting the lumbar fall forward with the toning of the belly, of the pelvic floor and the lower belly. So hopefully, those of you who've been coming here regularly, it's all starting to, you're seeing the similarity of our movements from toe to head, being head to toe yoga, starting at the toes. So hold that. And I'm going to show you one more option. Some of you might have a bolster. I'll do this sometimes if I've really done a lot of work on my lower back, where I'll put the bolster right under my belly. Or sometimes I'll watch TV like this for a little bit. I mean, not like the whole movie or anything. But that can hold you up. And then there's less work on your arms. You can do a blanket or a couch cushion. So you're just letting this curve, this sacrum, sit the way it's supposed to sit. Head of the sacrum in. Lower back long. Okay. Let's take a few more breaths and just be in the position that feels best to you. And then when you're ready, slowly lower down. And wobble a little maybe. And then just because we're here, we'll do a little bit of strength work just to balance it out, and then we're going to release. So from here, the arms come out to the side, head to the side. So let's keep all that in mind, everything we've attended to so far. So as we come down, now because we're going to work with strength, tone the pelvic floor, tone the lower belly. Okay. Now bring the head to center and lift the head and the heart. So feel how your back muscles are toning, right? They're engaging. And then lift one leg up without letting your hip come off the floor, right? You're keeping the pelvis symmetrical. And down, and the other leg, and down. So on your own, you could do one. If that's too much, if you're like, ooh, I'm feeling something that's too much, then you could also lower your head and just do the leg. But what I want you to feel is you're not lifting the hip. You're not rocking. Your hips are very stable. So yes, you're strengthening your glutes, right? Super important to do that. It's all important. And then your option is to take the opposing arm up with you. So the opposing arm, hold back by, let's hold it. Level the pelvis. Tone the pelvic floor. My hamstring's starting to cramp a little, so squeeze the muscle if you have any cramping. Think about those lower, the lower ribs that we worked when we did our sit-up. Can you tone those too? Hug your lower ribs in, even though you're lifting your heart. Find that balance of opposition. Lower down, release. Other side. leg, head, heart, maybe the opposite arm, and then pause. And when you stay there, and if you don't stay as long as I do, that's okay. Just do what you can. But as you stay, you're building stamina in your body, and you're able to really feel how you might go out of alignment when you stay. You want to really hold true to the symmetry of your hips, even though you're working opposite sides. And all those little things, like the hugging of the muscle to the bone in your leg, the lifting of the pelvic floor, the scooping of the belly, the front ribs activated, so your whole abdominal wall is activated. This makes a difference. It's the little things that count. One more breath. Come down when you're ready. Stay longer if you want to. Now place your hands next to your heart with your elbows in the sky. Head to center. Actively press your legs down, feet, knees, and pubic bone. And then lift your chest with your back muscles. Squeeze your shoulder blades super close. So really you're just lifting with your back muscles, not your hands. Then put pressure in your hands to support you. If it feels further, only curl to your comfort. One more breath. And then pushing into the arms, lift the pelvis off the floor. Back, take it towards child, pop the heel of the hand up. You want to always release the wrists. Good. Come once more onto all fours. Hands are slightly forward of the shoulders. Curl your toes under. Reframe that neutral alignment of the spine. Okay, press into the finger pads, hug the arms together. Heart is lifted. And then as we come up, we're going to come off the knees. Just look at your knees and bring them about 6 inches off the floor. Just 6 inches. And then lift your bottom. So you want to tilt the sitting bones up. Get that lumbar curve. Tone the front ribs in deep to the body. And then pushing into your hands, crease deep at the groin to bring the torso closer to the legs in neutral alignment. You might want to step your feet a little wider apart. Knees can stay bent so you can get your torso, your bottom up, take your front ribs in, and lengthen from hips to hands. So you're pushing into your hands. The center of the pose now is your heart. So extend from heart to hand and lengthen from hand to hips and take 3 more breaths. And again, sustain neutral alignment. Good. So downward dog is lengthening the spine. Secondary benefit is stretching the hamstrings. So don't worry about straightening the legs. Push through the hands, open the heart. Lengthen, keeping your front ribs hugged in so your lower back is long. One more breath and slowly release the knees down. Walk your knees forward a little bit and bring yourself around one hip or over your ankles and bring your feet out in front of you. Okay. And then let's release the wrists from dog position. Just interlace your fingers and release them out a little bit. And then bring your fingers out wide and slightly behind. Now, this is what I was talking about in the beginning. Seated poses can be oftentimes are the most challenging, because when we get here, we need to have opening in our hamstrings, which we're going to go to, and we're going to give them a little length now, but feel it from this position. We're going to go back to our backs. We need to be able to rotate this pelvis forward. Okay. And if that's not happening, we usually have to release the hamstrings and strengthen the back muscles. Okay. So feel that. Some people need to bend their knees to get that lower back in. And then from there, we want to take the front ribs down. Okay, so it's not the whole back extending. Front ribs in, so you want to feel that upper abdomen engaging. Traditionally, this pose is hands right next to the hips, pushing down and lifting the heart. If that's not possible to keep if the back starts to round, then you bring the hands further behind you and open up the angle of the hip joint to get that lower back. So feel into that. Take a few more breaths. This is called Dandasana. The feet should be lively, as in Tadasana. Look at your feet. Legs are active. It's a very active pose, even though it looks like we're just sitting around. So this is a really, this is a good measurement to find out, am I comfortable sitting on the floor? And if not, there's things we can do to take care of that. Not sitting on the floor to start with, because we need to work the hamstrings. So let's come forward with our hips, lay down on the ground again. Okay, we're back down. This is all on the ground. Part 2 is standing. And feel again, so the ground is a great feedback, the sacrum grounded, the lumbar light. You might not have space under your lower back, but there's a lightness. You're not pressing it. Get your shoulder blades comforted. And then straighten just your left leg. And lift your head up and look at that left leg and see that it's straight down. Your leg is in line with your hip joint, and create Tadasana foot. So your foot is very active as if you were standing on it. And you'll press down slightly on the back of your heel so your knee is not locked. And then you'll attempt to keep that left hip super grounded and your quadriceps firm. Lower your head, bring your right foot off the floor. And then slowly start to bring your right knee towards your right shoulder without losing the integrity of that straight leg. And open across. And then notice as you do this, what's happening in the pelvis. So this is going to be great feedback when we come to our standing poses, because a lot of the balancing poses, we bring a leg up and immediately we start to tilt the pelvis back and lose that curve. You can even do that to feel it. Let it drop back. When you drop your lower back into the floor, your thigh will probably lift on the straight leg. If your hip flexes are tight, it'll be difficult to straighten that leg. So just do the best you can to get the hip open on the straight leg. Bring the weight towards the sacrum tailbone region, and then bring that left leg, that bent knee, the right knee, towards your shoulder. Okay. Notice how that feels in there. Search your own hips for what feels good. And then leveling the pelvis in case you rocked onto one side, right? So level in the center of the sacrum. Take your hands behind that right thigh and start to straighten your right leg, but move the thigh away from you, not towards you. You're going to push your thigh into your hands. If it's difficult to hold the leg, then you use a tie. If you're that tight, or maybe you have a short torso, or you have a long torso and short limbs, and it's harder to get the leg. So push away. And again, the intention here is notice what's happening in the pelvis. So let's go back to those hip hikers we did in the very beginning, where we hiked a hip towards the armpit. Because that's what happens a lot here. So your right hip, that leg that's in the air, it doesn't have to straighten. You might find that you're hiking that right hip up. And actually we want to release it down. So move the crease of your right hip down. So you've got space on either side of your waistline. The other action that happens is as we bring this up, this leg, we want to get the stretch right in the belly of the hamstring. So you might even bend the knee a little bit to move that stretch point so it's not all in the back of the knee, and certainly not right on your sits bone. And as you bring the leg forward, the tendency is to want to bring the leg so far up, but then your pelvis tilts and you lose your curve. So let's keep the sacrum grounded and go right into the leg and not the lower back. Give yourself 3 more breaths here. Might want to rotate your ankle while you're here. And the other direction. You could also do this with a tie around your foot and hold this longer. And what's really important, what I want you to pay attention to today, is what's happening, not in the leg, yes, what's happening in the leg, but also in relationship to your pelvis and your lower back. So you're maintaining that alignment. All right, let's press out one more breath there. Give it a little squeeze. And then place your left foot on the floor. Take your right ankle to your left foot, left leg, and turn that knee open. Rock a little bit right to left. So once again, we're giving that sacrum a little massage. And then depending on your body, come to center, everybody. And then what's going to happen is, if you can, we're going to bring the left foot off the ground. But first, we will press the lower back to the floor. So do tilt your pelvis. Do engage your pelvic floor and your abdomen. Then bring the left foot up and hold the thigh. Again, if you can't reach the leg comfortably, use a tie. You could also set your foot on a block or against a wall. So as you draw those legs towards you, again, can you move the weight more towards the tailbone to keep that lumbar curve? And then as you bring the legs up, you want to feel the stretch moving into your right, deep right hip rotators. If you slightly bring the leg left or right, it's going to change the stretch point. So be curious and feel what's happening, because these are very important muscles to the comfort of your sacral iliac area as well, because it attaches to your sacrum. It's called your piriformis. And the piriformis, if it's tight, creates what's called piriformis syndrome, which feels like sciatica because it's compressing on the sciatic nerve. So you're going to give this little opening. If that's happening for you, do this stretch very gently. First point of sensation. And then stay a while so that the body has time to understand that it's okay to let go. This muscle, these hip rotators get tight when we sit too much. So take a few more breaths deeply. Feel the quality of your breath. Notice how the breath can help the body relax. And before you put the foot down, reassess your support system. So again, can you engage the pelvic floor and the lower abdomen so they're supporting you as you release the weight of the legs? Okay. Take the arms out to the side. Stretch your right leg up. Pull it all the way away from your head. So you're going to take that right leg out straight and strong. Tadasana foot. Might want to lift your head and check it out. See that it's straight out from your hip joint. And then bring your left leg up. Hold the knee and draw it across. So again, play with, you go ahead and move around a little bit with that pelvis. Hip hiker action. Just so you can see what happens. And then square the pelvis again. Maybe you rock more towards your left hip and away from the right. And then come back to center. So we want to awaken our awareness of how we're holding our body. So this translates into everyday life. So when we're lifting and moving and sitting, we align our body in a way that's very functional for our comfort. Take a few breaths, just getting a nice stretch point through the front of that straight leg. And you might feel a lot in the knee that's coming towards you. You could also, I forgot to do this on the other side, reach under and do this more like an inverted lunge. Just depending on your hips, right? And if that straight leg's a little bit bent because your hip flexors are tight, then that's what it is. But your intention is to reach out through that leg as much as you can, like you're pressing your foot against a wall. And then slowly you're going to transition to the next form, which is going to be that piriformis stretch. So let the right foot come to the floor. Bring the left ankle to the leg. Stretch it out. Release. Right to left. And I think we did the hamstring first, so let's do that. I'm going to go back to the lunge. And then we're going to take we're going to straighten that right leg up to the sky. Hold the back of the leg. Now, another modification for this is going to be to take the right foot to the floor right away while you're stretching the hamstring. That might be easier for some. So the pelvis is level on the floor. The knee might be bent. The leg is active. The more you can try and squeeze the quadricep, like attempt to straighten the leg so your quad's working, that's going to help the hamstring lengthen. And again, notice where you're feeling sensation. Try and get the stretch point right in the center of that hamstring. And keep the pelvis grounded. Rotate the ankle. Other direction as you're developing patience. So we want to open up these big muscles, especially the big muscles of the hips and thighs. We got to give it time to respond. It feels good to just stretch and go, but that doesn't really change anything. You need to stay there, keeping those fibers at length for a bit so they actually start to release and let go. It's also really good for just the blood flow more easily returning to the heart. So if you're on your feet a lot, it's nice to get the legs in the air. One more breath. Hips square, take the ankle to the knee, roll open the knee. Now before we lift the weight of the legs, we are going to roll the lower back into the floor. So go ahead and scoop that belly up, then take the foot off the floor and hug in. Now, maybe a little right to left. So again, try it on. Notice how this side feels compared to the other side. I like to take my legs ever so slightly. I'm going slightly to the right, and it just starts to get a little deeper into that piriformis. And you want to go to that point of sensation that feels welcoming. It could be a little intense, but it's not painful. And you want to hold that sensation, breathe, and relax everything around it. And keep checking in. That hip might try and slide up again. Your body's going to, if there's tension, like we're going right up against that point of tension, your body's natural inclination is going to be to move away from that tension. But then you never get to release it. So that's how the body can continue to hold this tightness that oftentimes becomes even unconscious. When we go to move in yoga, we're surprised at the little spots we find that are holding on. Let's take another breath or two here and just really feel into that hip. Tone the belly and the pelvic floor. Lower the foot. Take that left leg up in the sky. Stretch it all the way out. And then bring both feet to the floor. So now we're back to kind of where we started today with the feet grounded. Let's just rock slightly right to left. Just a little bit. And remembering all this movement and the importance of knowing what is neutral alignment. Okay. So come into center, your knees still hip distance apart. So you're feeling this alignment from your ankles to your knees to your pelvis. Your pelvis is settled into the sacrum. And there's a lightness under your lower back. And then you might, this is a nice way to lengthen the lumbar, is kind of push into your arms and lengthen, try and pull your back ribs away from your pelvis and then settle in again. So that's going to bring more of that posterior curve into your thoracic spine. So where your rib cage is, you want to lengthen and open around the kidneys. And then again, settle the weight of the pelvis, settle the weight of the shoulders. Turn your palms open at your side. And then straighten your legs out now and about shoulder width apart. They don't have to be pelvic width. Take them a little wider. Do a little wobbling. You might want to just jiggle your body a little bit. And then close your eyes and look inside. And again, notice the alignment from the soles of your feet to the crown of your head. Imagine how your bones are relating top to bottom. Relax the ankle joint. Soften the knees. Notice how that feels. Now, of course, you can add props for this, but I want you to feel this propless Shavasana. Just letting the legs open. Notice what you're feeling between the thighs and the pelvis. Do you need to adjust the pelvis at all so the lower back is a little bit more comfortable? Take some nice breaths and feel the belly relax with your in-breath, slightly rounding, and then sinking back down with your out-breath. And then take your awareness into your chest and feel the rise and fall with your breath, shoulders relaxed. Bring your awareness into the skull, the weight of the head releasing. Soften the face. And then draw your attention up to the space between the brow, what we call third eye center. Your seat of vision, wisdom, intuition, imagination. And from this place of vision, see your whole body. Be aware of all sensation, feeling, the physicality, the emotional state, the energy that's moving through you. See yourself clearly. And imagine moving into your day, staying well aware of how you move, taking care to move from a place of strength, from your core support, and fluidity through all those different ways that your body can move. Give yourself 3 more breaths here. And then as you exhale this next time, let the exhalation engage the inner body. So as you release the breath, let the pelvic floor lift, let the abdomen awaken, and tone towards midline, keeping that inner hug. Keep breathing. Let one knee come up and the other so the feet are on the floor. Rock again, right to left, just loosening up, bringing that water element into play. And then roll over to your side. Notice the alignment of your spine. Are you curling way in or are you in neutral? Either is fine, but just be aware. And then using your hands for support. Tone the core so that you're supporting yourself as you come up. This time cross the legs however you can and We'll work on an upright position in part B for lower back, but let's bring the equality to the sits bones. Drop the pubic bone away from the navel. Take the front ribs in. Lengthen from hip to armpit. Relax the shoulder blades. Draw the ears over the shoulders. Feel your alignment. And then keep feeling all day long. Be aware of staying aligned in your hips and shoulders so your spine is taken care of. Namaste.